Deadly violence in Philadelphia is on the rise right now. The city has recorded more than 220 homicides. That's 30% higher than last year. And we have with us today a local pastor who is using what's called healing circles as a method of conflict resolution to help curb the youth violence. I would like to welcome Reverend Dr. Donna L. Jones to the show. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what are healing circles?
Yeah, I am Reverend Donna Jones, and I pastor the Cookman Beloved Community Baptist Church at 51st and Spruce Streets in West Philadelphia. I also serve as the Executive Director of the Metropolitan Christian Council of Philadelphia, a Black-led philanthropy, serving the city through its Restorative Cities initiative and also as a grant maker in Philadelphia. But our primary goal in all that I do has to do with healing circles, which is part of restorative practices. And Cookman Church began doing healing circles in the early 2000s when we were at 12th and Lehigh. We were formerly Cookman United Methodist at 12th and Lehigh. And in healing circles, people who've been impacted by harm, what we might have called a victim back in the day, but the restorative language for this now is those impacted by harm, are able to sit with folk who've caused harm. Back in the day, we might have called that person an offender. And so a person impacted by harm, a person who caused harm, and someone from the community sit together to discuss how they were impacted and to discuss things that can be done by the whole group and by individuals in the group to make things better. The whole purpose of the healing circles is accountability plus healing. And it's really a part of restorative justice, a way in which both accountability and healing and localized control of response to a harm done within a community or to a person. And it's a great opportunity for the community itself to determine the outcome, for the person who was harmed to determine the outcome, and the person who caused harm. Additionally, it builds empathy. It helps people understand another person's point of view, and it helps people strategize together based on having had an opportunity to hear one another. And all of that leads to long-term healing. So a much different process than retributive processes that exclude the community, exclude often the person harmed when we really get down to trying to discern what will make things better. And in this way, everybody participates in bringing about the change that builds up the community and the people in it.
Awesome. So when you have these sessions, how long does the normal one session last and how many sessions are people expected to attend?
It all depends on what's going on. We've had situations, most of the time, it takes a minute before you even have the first session. It takes time to speak to everybody that was involved, everyone who was impacted, people who were directly impacted, people in the community that could have been impacted, as well as the person who did the harm was impacted by what happened. So there could be 3 or 4 conversations before the actual healing circle happens to prepare the way so that when people do sit together, they're prepared. People have had a chance to talk about their perspective of the incident, and people have had a chance to talk about their expectations. So in that way, when people finally do sit together face to face, there's already been some processing of events. And then the circle itself can take 2, 3 hours or more, depending on how deep things are that need to be worked out. And often there can be more than one circle. You know, there could be one circle that's just a community building. It's like, okay, we're all here together. We're all looking at the incident. Let's talk about what happened. And then there can be another circle that is taking place to say, okay, now that we've had a chance to process what happened, what do we see can be done to make things right between these people and between this community when the community is also involved?
That is awesome. How long have you been doing the healing circles and what made you start?
We've been doing them pretty much since 2002, 2003. In those days, Cookman Church was at 12th and Lehigh, right in the center of the Fair Hill section of Philadelphia. And we had an education program where young people who were chronically truant or involved in the court system came to us to complete high school because the Philadelphia School District had basically whatever the number of strikes are, where they say, okay, you can't, I don't know where you're going, but you can't come back here. Uh, at that time, DHS had two or three providers, and Cookman was one of them, who took on the opportunity to educate young teens between the ages of about 15 and 18 or so. And it was during that work that we began to apply restorative practice principles, which lead to that form the structure for healing circles. So to apply the restorative practice principles and healing circles to conflict. And we did not have guards at the door. We didn't have metal detectors. Yet we were working with a lot of young people that had issues with violence, issues with rage, issues with trauma. And the whole time that we did this work, we didn't have one serious fight, both at the school or even in the community, because we were able to use these processes to really come into play as soon as it looked like harm was going to happen. And every now and then things did get testy, and there was at least one time, but I can count on one hand over 10 years how many times someone actually had a fight. But there was at least one or two times where a fight did break out, and we were able to come to a resolution between the parties without it escalating into gang violence, without it escalating into someone being shot or killed.
So what is it about the healing circles that allows it to be an effective source for conflict resolution?
Well, first of all, it's centered in the community and it's centered in people who are the most impacted. In our regular systems of justice, the center is the state. It's very impersonal. The person is taken away from the community, from the family, and from the person harmed. A lot of the harm that is done person to person in Philadelphia is done within the context of relationships. People know one another. So by doing things in the context of known relationships, by doing things in the context of community where other people who know the people involved and care about the people involved, all of those things create an environment that's natural and is part of how humans act anyway. You know, if we think about some of our first experiences as children, when we see that someone's been hurt, we're quick to say, I'm sorry. And it's easy, actually, to then move to, okay, so what do we do to restore this relationship? What do we do to make things right between these people and between the community? And how can the community and each person work together to maintain the peace so it's longer lasting?
Okay. Can you share with us some of the underlining issues that you constantly see that fuels or contributes to the conflicts?
We have constantly seen frustration. We are often in the midst, if we're in urban areas, I grew up in West Philadelphia during the era of gang violence, not gang war. It was beyond gang violence in those days. But there can be an undercurrent of unresolved conflict. So imagine in our families, there could be two partners that are living together, and someone gets upset that someone didn't take out the garbage. I mean, something as simple as that. Usually, most human beings are going to address the situation one to one. They're going to say, I can't believe you didn't take out the garbage. The other person's going to say, I can't believe you can't believe because I did this because last week you didn't. And there's this whole dialogue that goes on that gets to the bottom of what the issue is. I didn't take out the garbage because I was mad at you because you made broccoli for dinner and I can't stand broccoli. You just kind of get, and we are used to that. It's the way humans interact. And when humans are allowed to interact in natural ways, then we're able to come up with natural solutions. And that's what happens in families. We sit down, we have a fight, we sit down, we talk it out, and we come to a resolution. And sometimes that resolution is, I'm not living here anymore. But we have come to the resolution. And even if the resolution is, I'm not living here anymore, we come up with, okay, so who's going to see the kids on what day? Who's going to take care of this, that, and the third? How am I going to get the oil checked on my car? Because you always do that. We start to negotiate. All of these happen with us as humans. And what we're saying is, let's go back to being human with one another. And then that way we don't have anger upon anger upon anger continuously unresolved, but we're able to move toward resolution.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, when they commit to coming, do they have to sign some form of contract, or what's the process for that?
It really depends on the situation. If it's a very serious situation, so there's sometimes it's a very serious situation, and people might say that they want something in particular to repair the harm. So let's say the harm that was done is someone got mad at someone else and broke out a car window. And you don't have to call the police for that. We can call neighbors together for that one and say, okay, what happened? Why did you break the window? And the owner of the car might be like, replace my window. And then I want you to wash my car for the rest of the month. And the other person might say, fine. And in that situation, we might sign a contract because that's a bit of labor intensive. And in the contract, there's accountability to the community. What will happen if the person doesn't replace the window? What will happen if the person washes the car for half a month and then stops washing the car after that? But the community gets a chance to ask that question and to pay attention to whether all that was put on the table is accounted for, because people still live in the community together.
Awesome. Do you teach other people how to do conflict resolutions?
Yeah, actually, we teach other people how to do healing circles, which can be a little bit different than conflict resolution. So there are great organizations in Philly. Good Shepherd is one of them, and there are others that do literal, formal conflict resolution. Healing circles is a little different, and we do teach it, as do others, but we teach it, and that's why I wanted to make sure we mention Metropolitan Christian Council of Philadelphia, because they make it possible for us to teach what we learned while we were at 12th and Lehigh as part of the Restorative Cities Initiative. And the Restorative Cities Initiative is an initiative that is coming forth from the community to address harm that's done, to address community healing, and to address resolution of conflicts through healing circles. And we're thankful for that. So we train in how our city can be restored through these processes. We also train people to conduct healing circles. And right now, we're in various communities because our goal is to train neighborhoods in Philadelphia so that we can have restorative response teams. In that way,
Awesome.
instead of calling 911 when somebody parks in your space, let's call together a restorative response team who can sit down and say, okay, what happened, y'all? Let's work this out and have the space
Awesome.
to work it out.
Awesome. Well, that was great information. And before we go, just give people a little contact information.
Mhm. Yep. I can be reached at 267-886-3139. We can also be reached online, D Jones, D as in Donna, Jones, at mccpphilly.org. And we have to remember with MCCP Philly, there are two P's, one for two P's for Philly, actually.
Awesome. Thank you, Reverend, so much for your
You're
time.
welcome.
All
And
right.
I
Thank you
thank
for,
you.
you're welcome. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next time.